I'd like to welcome our guests today, Kristy Cusher and Stephanie Bailey from the Youth Emergency Shelter. I don't know if I can talk after eating that wonderful food. I tried to talk her into cooking for our coalition from now on too, but she didn't fall for that. I'm Kristy Cusher and I work at the youth shelter. I have been at the youth shelter for 18 years now. So I have a lot of knowledge and a lot to say in little time, so I'll hurry.
Thank you.
Stephanie is our shelter director and I am the program coordinator. A lot of people, when they hear youth emergency shelter, all they think about is the fact that we have an emergency shelter there. So I actually run all of our outpatient programs. So I'm going to kind of go over all the programs that we have, and then Steph's going to talk to you guys about the actual shelter itself. So kind of in the center of the little handout gives you like a rundown of our programs. We have 3 counties that we cover. We cover Pittsburgh, McIntosh, and Latimer County. We have 3 counselors that cover that area, plus myself. We do outreach counseling, family, individual, group counseling, and we are a nonprofit, so this is at no charge to any of our consumers. So, and a lot of times, a lot of people run into the fact that they can't afford counseling, and they don't have insurance, they don't have what they need for services. And so we are a really good filter place for that because we don't charge anybody for anything that we do. We do a lot of behavior modifications, educational advocacy. A lot of times when we get involved with families and children, we'll find a lot of behavioral issues in the home with the children, so we can go into the home and work on that. And then education, I always talk, is like one of the most important components in a child's life, but not every parent sees it that way. And so we try to get in there and advocate for the kids and try to help with any educational problems they're having, work with the schools, attend IEP meetings. If they don't have IEPs and they may need one, work with a local psychiatrist to get an assessment and get them on the right track so that they can be do well in their educational track. Our 3 core programs are the First Offenders Program. These are children that are offending for the first time in the community. Well, they're supposed to be, that's why it says First Offenders. We get kids that are on their 4th and 5th and 6th offense. That's just how it happens, but we just kind of roll with the punches. This is a psychoeducational class. It is a evidence-based program that we designed actually as an association that we're a part of a long time ago. So it's our own curriculum, nobody else has it. But it is a 12-hour course that the child and the parent have to attend. As we all know, when we get started with some kids, there's usually something going on in the home too that needs to be addressed. So they are required to have a parent or a guardian with them to attend all 12 hours. This has been new to us. We are doing these classes by Zoom right now because of COVID. However, I have a counselor that absolutely loves doing it that way, and she's having great feedback from the parents being able to do it that way and have the flexibility. But I'm old school and I like the face-to-face and get in there, and seeing is believing to me, and so I get to read your body language and things. So, but we are trying to continue all these services during this difficult time. So we do have Zoom set up to do that. With some of our counseling, we do have a few of them that go by Zoom, but the majority of them we're still bringing into our office. But then outreach is our second main program, and then we have our community at-risk program. These are offenders that, the best way to describe it, are about to bridge over into the adulthood incarceration if they're not careful. Like that's their next step because they've already set the path. So they are hooked up with, I have a licensed social worker, and they are hooked up with that counselor specifically. And We try to start modifying those behaviors before they cross over into the adult world. So those are some of our main hubs of our outreach program. We also go into about 18 different schools in Pittsburgh, McIntosh, and Latimer County, and we teach Botvin life skills. And Botvin life skills is a substance abuse program. But as you guys know, these kids know more about drugs and alcohol than we'll ever know. They educate me every time I walk through the door because I don't know. I'm just lucky to have an 18-year-old that I go home and I say, what are they talking about? Because I don't know what this is, you know? So he'll say, yeah, you don't have a clue. And so he has to tell me. That's the only way I can keep up. But it is curriculum-based as well. It's an evidence-based program. We actually were picked as an association by the Department of Education to come in and provide this program. The Department of Education, they decided this was an issue in their school system. It was a component missing from education, but they didn't have a way of providing it. Teachers are busy. They've got enough on their plates. So they came to our association and we did legislation about 8 to 10 years ago to approve this as part of their curriculum for the schools. So we go in and we teach it, and we don't focus as much on the substance abuse component as we do educating them on decision-making, communication, basic life skills, self-care, and then we throw in some of that tobacco, marijuana use, vaping, alcohol abuse. We throw that stuff in, but we try to spend more time putting tools in their pocket to help them make better decisions instead of focusing on the actual substance abuse pieces. But it is 14 sessions. We do media education. We do bullying through this. It's just a good way for us to get in the classroom and build a dialogue with these kids and address some issues that are going on that teachers just don't have time for. And kids are not getting it at home anymore. So it just gives us an opportunity to get in there and help build some skills. And then we also have, at the very bottom of that one, this one just started 2 years ago, which is our chronic absentee team. We were in the middle of writing our grant. We rewrite our grant every 3 years, unless our funding source tells us different. And so we were in the middle of writing our grant, and I called Mr. Hughes, and I was like, is there anything we can help the school with while I'm writing this grant? Because we are community-based. And so what we do is we assess what our communities need, and that's what we write into our grant. All of our funding goes through the Office of Juvenile Affairs. So we don't bill anybody. It's grant funded. It was we piggybacked off a legislation a long time ago in the early 80s. And so that's how we've always operated. But when I called Mr. Hughes, he said McAlester had a huge absenteeism problem for kids going to school. So we all sat down and we developed we call it a CAT team. It's a chronic absentee team. And so we established guidelines for how many absences a kid could have before a team actually went out to the home and said, what's going on? We decided that education sees things one way, and social workers, and that's what I refer to myself as, see things in another light. I'm looking for different things than what they're looking for. So where they know education, they know their school policy, they know their attendance, I know what to look for in the home as a problem. So we go out as a group, one person from education, one person from the youth shelter, and we talk to the family and we offer assistance. We'll see, what can we do to help you? What's causing the absences? Is it because there's not a bus that comes close enough? Let us see if we can work with the school and get you something. Or is it because you haven't had running water for 3 weeks and your kids smell and their clothes smell and you're afraid to send them to school because they're going to be embarrassed? So if that's the case, then that's where we step in and take over and see, how do I get them running water? How do I help them get what they need? How do I get their clothes washed? What do I do to help these get stable and get back into the school? So, and we go out more than once on some families. Some of them are chronic. We visit them several times, but there's families out there that are struggling, and especially right now. So I don't know how it's going to look this year. McAlester has a really low enrollment this year because a lot of people chose to do the online. But they have to track kids that are online as well. They have requirements too. There's so many hours they have to log on and do, and if they're not doing it, they are referred to the team as well. But it went so well here when we first started that Mr. Hughes went to a principal's meeting and opened his mouth, and I got calls from the other counties that we work in, and they were like, hey, we want to do this down here. So we actually have CAT teams in McAlester, Eufaula, and Shakota now where we run. And yesterday we got 30 referrals from Eufaula schools already that have an absentee issue. And we work with, in Eufaula, each community works differently. We worked, at that time, we were working with Officer Busby on making a decision on when a parent should be ticketed, once we've been in the home, how's this gonna look. In Eufaula, the district attorney and the judge wanted a bigger say-so on how things went, so we have to kind of abide by what they want to make sure this works. And then in the same thing with our Shakota area, they have the say-so. So in McAlester, we do 2 visits prior to our referrals to law enforcement or Officer Busby at that time to take over, because that means we've done what we can and there's no longer anything we can help the family with. In those other counties, we can do 1 visit, and then if they show back up on our list, it goes in front of the judge. So I see the pros and cons of both. As a social worker, I want to get in there and help the family, so I need more time. And so I have to go to Judge Bridges and be like, give me a minute, I need more time. I've got to figure out what's going on with this family, because sometimes that's not the best solution. Sometimes they need help, but they don't know how to get it. And they don't have the resources that they need. So if I can get in there or my counseling staff can get in there and figure out what that need is, that's what we want to do. Because I want those kids in school, and I don't want the parents to be afraid to call and say, I need help. Because if law enforcement has to take over and the judge has to take over, and then that ball just keeps rolling. A lot of times we know that just keeps rolling. And I've been to homes that I've had to call child welfare on. I've been to homes where I've called the police to do welfare checks. We've had some interesting situations when we've been there. I love dogs. I love dogs. I'm an animal person, but my very first time I went out on my own, I thought I was going to be eaten alive, because I didn't realize that the house I was walking up on didn't have any windows. They had no glass in the windows. And as I knocked on the door, I heard about 50 dogs barking in the house, going nuts. And before I could make any other decision, one come through the window, and just as aggressive as could be. And so I just stood there like this. I was like, I can't run, I can't do anything. So I just stood there. And all of a sudden it was quiet, and I was afraid to move. And I was like, and he just sat down by my feet and was doing fine. So I went ahead with my visit, and then I was like, could you please get that dog so I can move? But we've had some very unique experiences going out. I've also had a parent ball up their fists and tell me to get the F off their front lawn or they were going to hit me. I just stood there and said, that's going to be a really bad decision, because I'm here to help you. If I'd have left, they'd never got help. So I just had to kind of stand there. And I told Primus Moore is one of our team members with the school, and I was like, where are you when I need you? That gun on your hip would have made a bigger decision than me standing there by myself. So, but in all the programs that we do, we don't charge anything. We don't charge the schools for anything that we do. We do run a 24-hour crisis line, so the shelter number is open 24 hours a day. They can call, and if it's outreach, they'll call me. If it's shelter, they'll call Stephanie. So we're kind of a hidden community secret. And so when I seen Deborah's post on Facebook, I was like, hey, we really need to come talk to you guys, because a lot of people think shelter and that's where it stops. And there's a lot of kids that run in and out of our shelter, and Steph's going to talk to you about that need so much help. But we have a whole nother program running over here too that people don't know about and don't know to utilize in our community. So, Stephanie? Oh, yeah.
If this is a youth program, but at what point no longer youth? You said that they work adult. Don't you have a history going? Don't you fall through a little bit more?
We can work as a case with them until they're 19 in our outreach program. So yes, and those things have developed over the years. Statutorily, they told us 18, that's an adult. But our contractors have changed the language a little bit, so we get a little more time now to work with them. But I have kids that I've worked with through the shelter. Matter of fact, before I left the office today, I have one that is probably 25, 26, calling for advice right now, needing some help and some assistance. And so we'll do whatever we have to. I won't leave one hanging. We have them show up at our office all the time that have been in our shelter and are adults now and they need help.
Okay. Now, you said you've been in there about 18 years.
Mhm.
Have you seen second generation out there?
Ooh, that ages me if I say yes, but yes, we have. Unfortunately, we have.
Actually, I have a question. When you mentioned the individual and family counseling, I know a team that their family's looking for just some counseling, but do they need to be in the system before you all can talk with them? So I can pass them this brochure and say,
Absolutely, absolutely. I have 3 counselors on hand. I actually have an intern right now who is actually already a master's level. She's actually working on her second master's. So I'm grooming her. So hopefully funds will happen and I can keep her as a counselor because the need is there. But a lot of people in our one goal is to keep children from penetrating the system in any way. So if I can keep them out of child welfare's hands and I can keep them out of the Office of Juvenile Affairs' hands, that's what we want to do.
Most of Kristy's kids that they see are not in the system. Now, on the other hand, my kids that I have, they are used all, not the majority are DHS custody. And I'll explain that when I go more in depth in it. But her kids are not usually. But the shelter is. You can go over here.
You have to come over here.
It's a barrier.
It's a barrier.
So I've been at the shelter 15 years. So Kristy, she started out as my supervisor. I was the shelter counselor there. And then as her programs expanded, kind of branched out, but they all like wrap around together. Like I said, our kids are mainly in DHS custody. They are just with us temporarily until they can go to like a foster home or a group home. Sometimes they may go back with their parents, but primarily they go into foster homes. And foster homes being traditional foster homes or therapeutic foster homes. And they have something new that I had never heard, and Kristy may have heard this term, intensive therapeutic foster homes. I had a little boy leave over the weekend actually, that he was going for an intake today to be in an intensive therapeutic foster home, which he needs. He needs a lot of one-on-one attention and stuff. So I'll start kind of from the beginning on how we decide like what kids are going to come into our shelter. There's a whole screening process that I'll do with their caseworker or their parent. I also have kids that come in, they're placed by their parents. And those parental placements are, the parents don't have a support system to get help. The kid needs a cooling off period. The kid's having trouble in school. The kid's running away. So they come to the shelter and they can stay for a cooling off period. I can do an assessment on them, make referrals to community partners that I think would benefit the family. I also can refer now to Kristy's programs for therapy because it's kind of like a wraparound. We've kind of changed our thought process on, these kids would leave the shelter and we do a follow-up on them, but we want to continue helping that family. So now we refer to our outreach program, and it's kind of like, I think our executive director terms is like a continuum of care. So the kids, they'll come in, I have to find out about all their history, if they're a sexual perpetrator or if they have been abused, what diagnosis they have, so I can make sure that they're an okay fit for the kids that we have in the shelter currently. So the screening process is done. I'll admit them if they're a good fit. And the ones that I don't admit, they may go to a different shelter around the state that can take care of them better than we could. Or I'll try to figure out other avenues to help them go to get the family the help they need. So they're placed with us and we get them enrolled into school. We get them to their doctor's appointments. I have several kids that are going into, they have occupational therapy, physical therapy. So we get them to all of those appointments. And kind of when you hear shelter, it's like a temporary home for these kids, but we're seeing more, kids are staying more long-term. So I've had a kid stay up to 2 years with us, is our kind of my longest length of stay. And he was severely autistic, and we had never really worked with that type of a child before, and we absolutely fell in love with him. I mean, every day we got kind of beat up. But every day we were at the school trying to help him because he would bite you, he would hit you. I mean, it was very, very.
Took the shirt off my back one day. I was glad I had 2 shirts on, and it was that or get beat up. And so I just went ahead and grabbed him. I didn't have my t-shirt because I had an undershirt on because he was aggressive.
Yeah.
He took a handful of hair when he did it.
He was with us for 2 years and we grew to, I mean, we loved him. He was our baby. So it's more of a long term. And, you know, everybody says, well, how long can you keep them? As long as their treatment plan goes and their caseworker or their parents working with us and the kid is making progress, then we'll keep them however long is needed. So, and then back to your question of like, you know, what happens if I have a kid, because we serve from birth to 17 years old. But when a child turns 18, if they're already placed in the shelter, then they can stay as long as I've got their treatment plan, their educational plan in the progress of getting that done, then they can stay. And I've had 1 or 2 do that. Hasn't been the most successful because once kids turn 18, they think, you know, I'm an adult, I can do what I want to do. And no, you still can't because you're in a juvenile facility. You can't just so much do that. But we tried it, and not to say we won't try it again. We're up for anything. At the shelter, every day is something new. You know, the shelter, we have an office area downstairs, and the shelter is upstairs. And, you know, if you hear a knocking or something, and me and Kristy just run and see what's going on. You never know what's going to be going on up there. So, because a lot of these kids have RAD. You know, they have tons of disorders and tons of behavior problems. So
Medications.
Yeah, like 10, 12 medications at once for one child. So it's just a home for these kids. We try to make it as normal as possible. And y'all are welcome to come and see the shelter. I know Mr. Sullivan has came and seen it. Kind of, you don't really think, you think of a shelter, and what our shelter looks like is more of a home. So I would offer anybody to come, if you guys want to come and tour the shelter, to kind of get more of kind of what we are. It's like a regular home for these kids. So, I mean, once they leave, we do, like I said, we do follow-ups, and we hear from them quite often, different ones that come back.
I'll jump in there, and I would encourage anybody to go visit it, because you will leave there inspired, and you'll realize, well, maybe I ought to be doing a little more. And so I've been there a few times. It's always a kind of experience for me. And my son is supposed to be doing his Eagle project there. If his dad could get together with you.
We'll get it. We'll make it happen.
It's a great place.
I volunteered at the youth shelter 32 years ago for like 2 or 3 months. Do you guys still accept volunteers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's just a packet that you have to fill out, and our volunteers, they won't ever like be alone with the kids and stuff, so we don't have to like do a full background check and stuff on you like we do with our staff.
Right.
But yeah, we'd love volunteers to come help, because these kids need mentors and somebody outside of the shelter, because a lot of them don't have anybody besides their caseworker. So yes, we love that.
Kids that are, say, 15, 16 years old that are maybe aggressive at home and the parents can't handle them and drop them off, are they allowed to just come and go as they please?
No.
Okay.
No, if a parent places them there, they have a visitation list and a phone list that they have, and the kids have to stay there. We're not a lockdown facility, so the kids are not locked in. At any time, they can just walk out the front door, go out the window, and they do. They just get tired and frustrated, and all they know how to do is run away from the situation. But no, they can't just come and go. They've got a really set of rules that they have to go by.
Is there a house parent there during this time?
We have 3 different shifts they're 8-hour shifts that rotate, and even the overnight shift, like the midnight to 8 shift, that person is doing bed checks every 15 minutes on the kids to make sure they're in their room, make sure they're okay. And besides that, they're cleaning and doing stuff like that, household type duties.
It's 24 hours awake supervision.
What?
24 hours awake supervision. It used to be like in the 70s when the shelter started, it was a house parent that lived there. And I had no clue till I first started working there that my grandparents were the house parents there in 72. And I had no idea. But they actually lived in the shelter with the kids. Those are long gone. There's supervision issues with all of that. And so now it's awake supervision at all times.
And the shelter's been there since 1971.
There, where you're at now.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, and how shelters come about was, when parents were arrested in Pittsburgh County, we have a picture of the actual spot that was at the county at that time. The kids went to jail too, because there was no place for them to go. They slept in a cot next to their parents. And so, it was McAlester Regional had like a community board at that time that come together, was like, this is a problem for our community, we've got to do something. And they actually donated the house and the land that we are on. So that's the original house. We've expanded and built offices a couple of times since it's been there, but that's how it started in the 70s. The community was like, these kids are being punished for things their parents have done, and there's got to be another solution. So that's how the shelters actually, started, was we had to get them out of those jail cells with those parents.
How many beds are in the facility?
We're licensed for 16. We're contracted for 8 beds through OJA. Now, when I say 16, I never have that amount of kids. I usually run about 6 to 8 kids because I have ratios that I have to go by for their ages. The state used to allow us to have younger kids in there, but now I rarely get kids under the age of 6 in. So it's usually 6 to 17 are the age group, and about 6 kids. I've been running 6 kids for probably 6 months now.
She has to take into consideration what's going on in the lives too. You can't have 3 children that are autistic, high on the spectrum, and operate. We have 1 staff member on the floor at all times with these kids. Sometimes if we're lucky, we have a couple there, but it's hard to keep staff. So if you know people that are looking for a job that are over 21 and they're good people, definitely need staff.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's 365 days a year, away supervision all the time, and it's hard.
We have a huge turnover. Everybody's like, oh God, y'all always seem to help. Well, it's a very stressful job. And the people that tend to stay longer, you just have to have the compassion for it. And you've got to realize how to manage all the stress that comes with it, because it never stops. It's all the time.
They're not your kids, but they are kids. And so you have to find that perfect balance of being able to run a household of somebody else's children and behaviors and still give them love and compassion that they need. So it's a tough world. They are the backbones, the ones that work the floor. That is the backbone of our facility, because if we have to fill in shifts, we're taking midnight pay when they're sleeping. We're not gonna lie. We want the sleep shift. I want to go have to check. I don't want the 4 to 12 when they're all getting home from school and everybody's got homework and there's a meal to be cooked and they're running all over the place because they've been locked down at school all day. You know how it is with your own kids when that happens. So try having 6 other kids, that belong to somebody else doing that. It's a hard job.
Well, you're really building people to come to work.
Well, hey, we're honest with them too. Like I said, I worked shelter when I first started. We're honest with them when they come in and interview. Like, can you stand being cussed at, things thrown at you? Everything in the world that's on their shoulders is coming at you because they have no idea how to filter that information. And so we try to warn people and let them know it takes a lot to be out there. Stephanie, bless her heart, when the very first day she started and I hired her, I had 5 teenage boys about to attack our executive director. And she was sitting on the couch and I was like, how about you go back downstairs? Because I didn't want her to leave. But, the world we live in, that's what happens. That's the world, that's what they're used to.
I will say I've been over there 100 or 200 times
Exactly.
over the years, and not every time. Sometimes the juvenile gets out of hand over there with the staff, but more often than not, they're better on the jail. The staff knows how to handle them, they're professional, they know there are problems, and I think the kids appreciate that inside.
We rely a lot on law enforcement.
Is this a state?
Well, we're funded through OJA is our main source, but we rely on donations and stuff. So we are licensed through DHS, and they have to come and do their inspections and stuff, but we're not a state-run.
My wife and I ran a home similar like this in New Mexico, and we chose not to
we ran under the state.
Yeah.
And what we did is we actually had the opportunity to take the churches, and then the churches got really involved with us.
Yeah.
They were our umbrella, they were, a lot of our churches were our funding.
Yes.
Once they got to know, you know.
And our kids have the option to go to church if they want to. And most recently, they went to Life Church until we kind of got a group that the little ones did not need to be at church. But we went to numerous different churches. All the churches in this area are great.
And that was the difference between our program. That was part of it. They have to go to church with us, because that we teach them family settings, and it was a miracle of how the parents, we cut off the parents for that honeymoon stage, like, you know, you gotta give us 3 months so they can get used to it.
Yeah.
It worked. Once we got them, you wanna see your kid, you just at church, and all that. I mean, God bless you both, because I've been down that road, and man, that's why I got this grant.
And a lot of, like, with our outreach cases too, talked about individual and group and counseling and stuff, we don't just stop there. If there's a need in that home, I'm working with one of the families right now on trying to get them an adoption for a child that they have. Unfortunately, our child welfare system is broken. They're doing the best they can with it, but it's broken. And this child was removed from a home, given to an aunt, and said, yeah, you look good, here you go. And they never put any services in place for this child. You know, and so for 3 years now, they've had this child with all these behaviors. And so I have set up with an attorney. I have been working with that family and an attorney to try to get adoption. I've helped them get food stamps set up and, sooner care for this kid, because they were given another child. They have 2 of their own that are the same age as this one. And so they were never let. You know, they were not given any assistance at all. So we want to get in the trenches and work with these families. We have to meet them where they're at. If you don't meet families where they're at, then you're not going to succeed. I tell my counselors all the time, don't be a counselor that sits across the desk from somebody, because that doesn't help. I have had numerous LPC licensed counselors work for me, and my best counselors, except for one, are bachelor's level counselors. They're willing to get in there, they're willing to work the problem, they're willing to find out what's going on. I have a licensed social worker right now. She has left and come back to me 3 or 4 times, because she says it's just her heart. It just pulls her right back to this. She's absolutely amazing, but she's a diamond in the rough, because when I work with counselors, that's hard to find. Thank you guys for having us.